Carpe diem, my name is Ultranatic, and here's the penultimate total drama vlog for this new 2023 season, the first season, if you will, because again, the second season is coming in just a matter of days, and again, I'm really excited because this season, even with its problems, has been in general very, very good, and we have another really good episode here entitled Caved by the Bell. I like that title quite a bit too, actually, and in the end, like, what's good about it is pretty self-explanatory. It's a simple challenge, complex but not complicated relationships, and just enough excitement about who might go home because you're not entirely certain he'll go home, despite it seeming like there is one clear target. But we'll get to that. First, we gotta go with the opening, which has Millie wanting to cement her super alliance with Priya by giving them both superhero costumes. I'll admit it's kind of corny, but at the same time, I do like seeing this further nerdy side of her that isn't just all about like research and books and whatnot. I'm nothing against that, but I do like seeing a couple extra layers to Millie. I think that's pretty cool of them to show. And Priya, while finding it a little bit hokey, does get on board with the plan eventually. We see that Bowie still has Millie's notebook, which he intends to use to break up that super alliance. But before we get to that, we have Julia try to campaign to this alliance to keep the girls together because an all-woman final three. And they're like, we'll don't call us, we'll call you, is basically what their response is. You know what that means. Bowie then goes and campaigns as well, but he has a much more simple, effective plea. I am not Julia. And they're like, that's a really good plea. I like that. That's just funny because they're like, we just want Julia out. Who cares for any reason? But Bowie has a strategy, which I'll admit I like, but it's also kind of risky when you really think about it. He says that rather than just vote with Millie and Priya, the nerds, as I will shorten them because, I mean, they are kind of nerds at the season, rather than work with them, he's going to team up with Julia, but throw the challenge so that either of the nerds can win and she can't. I'll admit, I do kind of see what they're going for here. You know, if anything, you know what that kind of reminds me of? Adam Klein's strategy in Survivor Millennials versus Gen Xers, because he often was not winning immunities, but what he was trying to do was prevent the biggest target in the game from not winning immunity and help his alliance members by doing so instead. That is actually a really good strategy, and it worked out and got Adam the win, so it could work. And then after they lose, he's going to betray Vecepia. Sorry, not Vecepia. I'll get to why I said that in a minute. He's going to betray Julia and work with the nerds to get to the final three instead. And yeah, it's going to be a major betrayal for Julia, but it's going to be a good long-term move. I say long-term as if we don't have 2 episodes left, for Bowie. Now, I said Vecepia because I was thinking about what else this reminded me of, and it reminds me of Vecepia, I believe I'm saying her last name, Towery, or, yeah, I think Towery. I might have that wrong, but she was the winner of Survivor's 4th season, Marquesas, and she initially worked with another contestant named Kathy at the Final 4 to break up a different duo, and they succeeded. You would think that'd make them a good Final 2 pact, but because Vecepia understood that Kathy was the biggest jury threat, she, during the Final Immunity Challenge, after Kathy is eliminated first, Vecepia makes a deal with Nalia. Hey, I will throw a challenge. Please vote out Kathy. And Nalia's like, okay. And it works out perfectly. Vecepia gets taken to the Final 2, and she wins. So again, there's 2 winning strategies here that I'm kind of seeing in tandem with Bowie, and I do like seeing this super strategic side to him, along with just all the other contestants too. Like, I love how good and strategic this season has been. It always felt like an afterthought in the early seasons, but now it's like they actually put a decent amount of focus on it while keeping the action, adventure, and comedy of the rest of the series in focus too. That's a really good distribution of priorities, if you will. So then Bowie goes and plays both sides with Julia, saying like, no, they're too tight-knit. We gotta work together to get them out. initially Julia's not on board, but after Bowie's like, okay, well then it's your funeral at the marshmallow ceremony, and that gets her thinking, okay, fine, let's work together, yada yada. We then get to the challenge, which is going to be a cave trek of sorts. They have to get through this giant cave. It's like a maze with a bunch of dangers in it, and pick up some Chris tokens on the way. Whichever player comes out with the most tokens wins immunity. Now, Chef also tells Chris to be responsible and say, tell him about this dangerous thing that is in the cave. Again, that's the biggest improvement of this season. I love a lot of the characters. I love a lot of the dynamics and the romances and whatnot. But all of it could have fallen apart if they continue to make Chris and Chef as psychotic as they do. But they don't. And that is one of the biggest pluses for this series, because they could have detracted a lot, but they don't. So good on them. Now, Chris is skeptical of this monster existing, which I find weird. You watch this show, right? There's literally been monsters in these seasons since pretty much the first. The Sasquatch and Aqua. That's a monster. Why would there not be, why would you not believe there's one in this cave? I don't know, a small part of me likes to theorize that maybe he got a bump on the head, which made him forget some things that happened in past seasons, but also gave him a little bit of a personality rewrite. I don't know, you could theorize that. Either way, at the very least, they are acknowledging it. Now, the cast do ask, well, wait a minute, what if we don't want to do this challenge? Because of how dangerous it is. To which Chris says, I thought you might ask that. Well, and he caves them in, basically. They all survive, but yeah, that is back to the evil Chris we remember. I'm kind of okay with it, actually. I mean, the reason I'm okay with it here, but maybe not everywhere else, is that this at least felt like a necessary evil to keep the plot rolling. Not just evil for the sake of being evil, or uncaring for the sake of being uncaring. No, there's a point to Chris, being a villainous host this time around. Yes, that's more of what we're talking about. So, once they are caved in, we see Julia give this kind of victory dance because it looks like the nerds got crushed. They didn't. But was there any doubt of that? I have a casualty counter for a reason, after all. And they split up in their duos, Millie and Priya, Bowie and Julia. So again, we have the nerds go to this one part of the cave that has a bridge over a lake of toxic waste. They're in superhero costumes, so I wonder. No, that's not what happens. But I thought that'd be kind of interesting. They try getting coins, and when I say they, I mean Priya tries getting coins that are up on the ceiling and throwing them to Millie, and Millie goes back to her unathletic side, which part of me is disappointed by, because we saw her be really badass in the last episode. But I guess at the center of it, she isn't much of a sports person, so there's that. And in Millie's defense, Priya could have just put them in her own backpack for safekeeping, right? Why are you just trusting Millie to get them? I mean, for as much training as you were doing for her, for a Millie throughout the season, I don't think she was going to become an Olympic athlete by the season's end, because you're only there for a few weeks at most. So, and Priya is of course disappointed when Millie only ends up getting one token from the ones that she threw towards her. Then we see Bowie and Julia enter a different part of the cave, a bat cave. And not the one that's occupied by Bruce Wayne. It's an actual cave of bats. They run around scaring Bowie and whatnot. Julia gets a ton more coins because of course she does. And then we see Millie and Priya get to another part of the cave, which has this giant water slide. And again, a couple keys dangling from the ceiling. She talks about how her superhero costume is getting a wedgie. And if I had to pick one other significant flaw with the episode, okay, not significant, it's not it doesn't really get on my nerves, but it is the one thing where I think it could have been improved on. It is that Millie, for much of the episode, is bringing up her superhero outfit as why she's struggling in this challenge. And I'll be fair, that would probably make someone struggle, but at the same time, it's kind of self-inflicted because she's the one who made the costumes. I mean, you could have written that out and just had her unathletic side be what's holding her back, period. But I don't know. It's kind of nitpicky. It's not a big problem, but it's one of those things where if you cut that out, it wouldn't really. I don't think you'd miss much. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking for stuff that I want to improve on because I just like the show to be at its best. But anyway, they go down the slide. They miss most of the coins, or at the very least, they don't keep all of them, and they narrowly save their lives. But that monster that Chef was talking about, they do see it for a brief second down in the water before going down this giant water slide, and they're like, okay, let's get out of here as fast as we can. Bowie and Julia then come across a giant spider web. Bowie continues trying to stall Julia. You want to know what's funny about Bowie's strategy of throwing the challenge to stop Julia? It's like not the least bit effective. It's a good strategy on concept, but does it actually do a dang thing? Nope. A small part of me thinks it's not kind of pointless. Well, to be fair, not every strategy has to be effective. I do prefer it when these sorts of plot points actually go somewhere in this challenge, in these episodes, but I don't know, I'll admit, it'd be a teensy bit unrealistic if literally every strategy worked out exactly as planned. So I do like that it doesn't quite work out for Bowie, despite his efforts. Of course, he tries stalling Julia here, but she throws him under the bus, or rather, into the spider web to get eaten by the spider, and she grabs all the coins. She's gonna leave him for dead, but Bowie's like, oh wait, if you don't win immunity, you're gonna need my vote to stay in the game. And Julia's like, fine, I'll save you. Get out, let's go. Both duos regroup. Priya and Millie are mad at Bowie that Julia has a lot of coins, and Bowie's mad that they don't have very many at all. I think between the both of you could both be doing a little bit better, but I don't know. I think Bowie has a little more reason to be angry because it's not like he isn't trying. It's just Julia's a bitch. So, of course, he's going to be like this. Of course, we then see Julia and Bowie make it to the exit, and Bowie's like, screw this, I'm just out of here. And Julia sees a lot more coins at the bottom of this bridge that they're crossing, but she, too, sees that monster that Chef warned about. And as soon as the nerds come in, and she knows that they're short on coins, she tempts them by saying, there's a couple extra coins down there. Not enough for you to win, but enough for you to lose less embarrassingly. So, take your chances. And she walks out, and, we see the coins getting counted for her. She's got, over 200. And she's like, all right, I'm going to begin, buying some stuff online with my phone. Again, I kind of love that they just stop with the whole no phones and the whole drama thing. I thought that was, I think it's kind of funny. I just sort of redacted that completely. But it does show Julia's cocky side, and it does root more for you to want to see her go home, because counting your chickens before they hatch is what I'm seeing there. Now, this is a good highlight for the episode, actually, because Millie, having been unfortunately useless in most of the challenge, wants to make it up to Priya by going and getting any of the coins down there herself, because she knows that she needs to help Priya win, because if she doesn't and Julia does, Priya goes home. I mean, or it might be deadlocked, but at the same time, that's a pretty good move there. So Millie does go down, but they encounter the monster, which is like a giant fish. I'm going to call him Monstro, because basically that's what he is for this episode. And he eats Millie. I would not count that for a casualty counter, because we see later that she's, like Monstro, or Geppetto inside Monstro, she's just stuck in there. She's not the least bit injured, so I don't know if I can count that. Priya, like a good friend, goes back in to save her. You know what? That is good. Again, you have a good friendship, and you are kind of paying her back for saving your life twice in the last episode, so I like that comes full circle on this one. And they discover inside this monster a whole lot of coins, which they could use to win if they can get out of this fish at all. But Priya, having had her parents take her to some kind of retreat or something to be eaten by fish several times to escape, your parents are messed up, Priya. But having had that experience, she's like, okay, I'm going to get on the uvula, punch you a little bit, and they're going to, gag us up. and I guess also bring him all the way back up to the entrance of the cave. I don't know how that worked, but whatever. They get up to the entrance. Priya wins immunity because all the coins belong to her, and Julia is, of course, distraught. They make it to the marshmallow ceremony, and the votes are read, and at first it's 2 votes for Julia, 1 vote for Millie. Now, they do bring up, if the vote ends up being a tie, the person advancing to the next round is going to be whoever has the most immunity wins. I'm conflicted about what I think about that idea for a twist, because on one hand, you know what this reminds me a lot of? Survivor, heroes versus healers versus hustlers, when Ben, the person who had been clutching his way through idol finds to the Final Four, sporadically lost immunity, but rather than actually just be voted out like you'd expect, he is given an opportunity to survive, because a new twist means that the person who won immunity is actually picking one person to be safe, and the other 2 people go to a fire-making duel. And, of course, Ben wins it, makes it to the final 3, and wins his season, and I do acknowledge that's a pretty controversial, even suspicious way for him to have made the finals there. Whatever you think of Ben in his seasons or in real life, that's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is just like, does that destroy the integrity of the game a little bit? I guess, but you do kind of need a good... Yeah, you do kind of need a good way to get people out, but this does beg a decent question. What if instead for a tiebreaker you do what old school Survivor did and be the person who had the most votes against them before goes home instead? I'm not saying that was necessarily perfect either, although it did oust transphobic Jeff Varner in Australian Outback, so there's a little bit of a plus side to that. But either way, if you really think about it, who would have more votes against them between Millie and Julia? Because Millie nearly went home at the final 8 because of some stupid move made by Priya, and also a strategic incentive, I guess, from Bowie. Julia did probably get votes as well at the in episode 6, but at the same time, it would be a little bit more suspenseful, and you could write in that, hey, one of these 2 did in fact get more votes down the road, and it would actually seem a lot more fair if you ask me. I think that works a little better. That being said, would it be more exciting for them to give the win, the advancement to Julia just to make things more exciting and competitive? I suppose, but I don't know. Again, it does somewhat taint the credibility of the show. Not like they've never done that before, because, you know, they always do that kind of BS stuff like that, like with Lindsay getting eliminated, and that's off the chain. Still hate that. So, anyway, 2 votes for Julia, 1 vote for Millie. The final vote? Julia. Like, Julia's like, no, you read it wrong. There's no way. Unless Bowie. Yeah, it's like, hello, dummy. It's like, of course, Bowie's like, yeah. I mean, as she said earlier, we're the villains. So, yeah, Julia goes home, and we get that Dock of Shame outro from Chris McClain. That's usually where the episode ends, but now is where Bowie brings out that notebook. And for anybody wondering, well, wait a minute, why doesn't he use that notebook earlier in the episode? They actually explain that in a way that I do think makes sense. Because she knows that if she breaks up that alliance, it would help his game, but also help Julia's game. And he understands the bigger fish to fry is Julia. True. I mean, I'm as intimidated as I am by numbers. Like, Julia has been so dominant that you can't trust that she wouldn't just comp her way at this point too, and then you go home at Final Four anyway. So that's a calculated risk that I think works out. So instead he decides, wait till Julia gets home, then break up the friendship of Millie and Priya. And that's exactly what happens. We see a mysterious package left for Priya. I assume that Bowie does that so that Millie doesn't instantly figure out, oh my god, it's my journal, don't read that. This way it gives a little bit of space to give Priya the chance to read that journal. Of course, Priya reads it, is offended by everything that Millie wrote about her and her family. I wouldn't be too offended by your family. I really think it through, Priya. Everything you dealt with in your childhood is really messed up. Just saying. But yeah, Priya is of course mad, and this puts everything about their friendship into question. And Bowie gives like a little grin and laugh about like how he broke them up. And that concludes the penultimate episode, Caved by the Bell. In general, yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was a good episode. It had good suspense. Only minor errors when you really get down to it. And it does make me really excited for our finale. Yes, I know the results ish. Like, I only know the one ending. I don't know if there's another one we got at some point. But I am at the very least aware of what happens. But either way, I've been loving this build-up. Everything does feel earned and warranted throughout the season. And I do like all these final three to some extent. So, yeah, I'm especially excited to finally get to that finale in the next vlog. And I will see you all when I make that. Take care.